Hello, this is Glenn Berry from Atma Environmental. I'm the Principal Environmental Consultant, and today we're on site with Atma Environmental. We're here to look at the work we're doing on this development site, which is located in Hawthorne. It's an inner city Melbourne suburb. It's had a lot of former industrial usage, and in doing the preliminary work on this site, on this particular site, we've identified a number of industrial uses. But a particular concern on this site is the location of a former dry cleaning premises. Now, dry cleaning uses dry cleaning fluid, of course. This is a chemical called perchloroethylene, which is heavier than water and poses some a significant risk to groundwater, but also some particular challenges with how we investigate it. So we'll be looking at that issue and how we're managing that. We've also got an underground storage tank which has been removed, and we can look at that, and some other issues relating to asbestos left from the demolition process here on site. So I mentioned earlier that underground storage tanks were a concern on development sites, and we do have one on this particular site. So for your interest, we have a shot here of a tank which has been recently removed. The tank itself has been taken off-site to an appropriate tank destruction facility. Once the tank is removed from the site, we have an open excavation. Samples are taken of the floors and walls to ensure that any residual contamination left on the site meets environmental criteria. When the tank comes out, there may be impacted soil surrounding the tank, which can be placed onto a stockpile adjacent to the open excavation. Samples will be taken of that stockpiled material so as to make some judgment as to whether it can possibly be reused or to determine its off-site disposal classification. Well, here I'd like to introduce you to Rory McPhillips. Rory's one of my senior environmental consultants. He's been doing the drilling here today. So, Rory, what are some of the objectives in looking at this work?
Today we are installing a network of groundwater monitoring wells. The aim of the exercise is to further assess the impact of known groundwater contamination on the site, and ultimately to determine whether or not the historical dry cleaning use on site may have been the source of this groundwater contamination.
That brings me around to the dry cleaning. Now, on dry cleaning sites, what are some of the risks in drilling those type of contaminated sites?
Well, it can be quite tricky, Glenn. We don't want to mobilise any contamination that may be in the ground from one area to another, and specifically on this site from the upper to the lower aquifer.
Right, so how are we going to manage that risk of mobilizing contamination from a level in the higher part of the aquifer to a level in the lower part of the aquifer? What do we do?
Well, we got to seal the upper aquifer before we puncture or penetrate through the intervening layer. And to do that, we've ran steel casing into the ground, which should penetrate off the upper aquifer from the lower aquifer before we puncture the intervening layer.
Right.
Through some samples we've retrieved from the monitoring well drilling here. This is a sample of the Yarra River alluviums. It's sand with minor clay. It's an unconsolidated sand.
And that's where we think the majority of the groundwater is going to sit here.
That's right. That's where we're finding the uppermost aquifer is in this sand material.
Right. Now, below that, we've got something else.
Directly below that, Glenn, we've got tightly packed clays like this.
Wow.
And these are going to be the intervening layer between the upper and lower aquifer.
Well, I think that's good news for the client, because that should penetrate any, or should limit any penetration of this DNAPL into the lower aquifer.
That's the theory.
Right. And this is where we intend to set the casing to preclude any downward migration unnecessarily.
That's right. So this steel casing is screwed into this tight clay.
Right.
And then once the casing is installed, that should stop any water from the upper aquifer accessing the lower aquifer when we drill through the casing.
Enable us to drill a bit deeper and get the sample from the lower aquifer and find out what's really going on here.
Yeah.
shield casing to lock off that part of the aquifer so it can't cause any downward mobilization of the perchloroethylene. I mentioned earlier that asbestos on development sites can be an issue. It seems that on this particular site, when the wrecker came through, it didn't take quite enough care, and what we've got now are pieces of asbestos right through the soil left on site. So we're having to manage that. Rory, you've found a few of the pieces here that you've got.
Yeah, Glenn, that's right. So in summary, we've got to ensure the proper monitoring and OH&S procedures are put in place to protect our workers on site from potential risks from this asbestos cement sheet, and also remediation of it is going to be required prior to development of the site.
Alright, so we've been here on site in Hawthorne. We've been looking at the goings on. We've taken a close look at the hydrogeological assessment, particularly how we're drilling this aquifer and the measures we're taking with respect to the dry cleaning fluid that's been found here. We've looked at the asbestos and we've looked at an underground storage tank excavation. From here we've got to sample the network of groundwater investigation wells that have been installed, get those samples to the lab, and wrap up a complete environmental site assessment report that can be used to audit the site and have it approved for its proposed future use.